Welcome to In the Zone, your mental strength and endurance podcast presented by Maayke, sports psychologist.
Hi.
And myself, Thierry, endurance sports coach. Today we are going to talk about planning and how to successfully plan your next season to basically achieve your goals. Maayke, planning.
Yeah, planning is extremely important. Committing to a plan basically frees up cognitive resources to do other things. In other words, it helps you not only to be more successful, but also make room for other things. And we can look at planning from a psychological perspective, of course. I think it's important to plan your season, and we talk about goal setting, but also we talk about the mental side of planning your training and the mental side of planning a specific event. So there are different perspectives to look at.
So let's talk about planning the season, the overall season.
Yes. So we know that the best performance is triggered when a goal is very specific and difficult. This means that it has to be doable, but challenging. And it needs to be in a context of high engagement, as we call it, which means that it needs to be important for you and attractive. So without important and attractive goals, it's very difficult to achieve them. And we talk about SMART goals. It's a very famous acronym, and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So let's first start to talk about being specific.
So your specific goal, you mean which race I'm going to do?
Exactly.
Or it doesn't have to be a race. It could just be a challenge you set yourself.
Exactly.
But to have, from my side, I would say you want to really have one, maybe two main events.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be what we call your A race.
Exactly, yeah. And it has to be something you think is realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what I see sometimes people just come up to me and say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they have literally 10 races for next year. And you think, okay, that's great, but you're not going to be able to be at your peak for those 10 races. You've got to, if you really want to perform, you have to choose one or maybe two events that you really plan for those. The rest of the events, I would say, are more training races. So these are kind of B races where you have, a B race, you could go a little bit hard, but it's really training for the main one, and a C race, which is just basically a training day.
Mm-hmm. But what about people who say, look, I really do this only for fun, and I don't have a specific objective with regards to time. Is it possible to do like 10 events?
Yeah, definitely. But then what I would say, for example, a runner, you could say, right, I'm going to start with, if your goal, let's say next year is to do a marathon in the summer, maybe you could start with a 5K race, then a 10K race, then a half marathon, and build it up. And so many times I see people, the first race I'm going to do is a marathon, and then I'm going to do other races, and they find that they're very tired for these races, and it's not much more fun in the end.
Okay, yeah. So what about measurable? So
on measurable, what I love to do at the beginning of a season, at all times, during the whole season, but especially before you plan when you plan, is to do some assessments. So you want to see where you are now. So time T1 or T0, whatever we want to talk about. And why do you do this? Is, like you say, you want to measure how much progress we're making. But we also want to determine the correct zones for you to train. So if you're a runner and you're maybe a bit afraid of testing again because you think, maybe I've lost fitness or something. But if you keep those same zones that you've had at your peak from the previous season, and you're now obviously a little bit less fit because it's the winter training, you're going to be working too hard. The zones are not going to be correct, and you're not going to be able to progress because you're going to be just fatigued the whole time because these zones are not properly set. So the goal number one when you do the assessment phase is to determine those zones. That's exactly the why you assess. And I would say I'd recommend to test every 4 to 6 weeks to track progress.
Okay.
And it's not always a linear progress, but from let's say the winter until the summer, you should be able to see progress there.
Okay. Yes. And then it's also something which shows with the results you're showing whether it's achievable or not.
Yeah.
What you're about to plan.
No, absolutely. You can. That's where you have to be. Your goals have to be achievable. That's true. That's I think the A in SMART. The assessment is just there where to track progress, to see if you're in the right direction. You know, is it working? Is it not working? Your training. Do I need to switch something? Because I'll have athletes which will, respond very well to a type of training, and some others which for the same type of training will not respond at all. So you have to be able to change that and to see it. So if you don't test, you're not going to be able to see whether the training is working or not. So you can give as many threshold runs or threshold bike sessions, but if that doesn't help, you've got to be able to switch that.
Okay. And what about the R, realistic? That seems pretty obvious. How do you know when an objective is realistic?
Yeah, that's realistic. You can have a look at the. It depends what your goals are really, because again, you can sign up to an Ironman and be a complete beginner. It's just going to be really long. Now, if you're a beginner and you want to do an Ironman in less than 10 hours, that's not realistic. So you have to be guided and accept some level of achievement based on many things, on how much you're able to train, how much time do you have, your family situation, your job, all these things. If you know that next year is going to be a big year for your family or for your job, well, maybe it's not the right year to have a huge goal, and take a step back a little bit and say, okay, instead of doing my marathon in 3 hours, I'm going to be happy with a 3:10 and that's it. And just accept that, to have a realistic target.
Is that also something you extensively discuss with your client?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Quite often, you get both ways. You'll get guys who really want to do something very high, and you think, okay, let's dial it back down a little bit. But quite often as well, some people that maybe could push themselves just a little bit harder and maybe don't expect that they can achieve these things. So you really want to unlock that potential.
Okay. Well, okay. And finally, we have in the SMART approach, we have the T from time bound. An objective needs to be time bound to be really motivating. So what does that mean, time bound, in a planning you are giving your clients?
So, for example, I had someone today, and I said, okay, look, what is your week typically looking like? How much time do you have? Can you train 4 times a week? Can you do 3 times? If you're a professional, you're going to train every day, twice a day or 3 times a day, whatever. You're going to go to the gym in the morning, you're going to go on the bike, because they have time. Now you work full time, you have a family, you have kids, whatever. You're not going to have as much time. So you really need to be realistic on what you can achieve. And that's where quite often people tend to be a bit over optimistic, and they say, yeah, no, I can definitely do 3 bike sessions a week, 3 runs, 3 swims, and 2 gyms. And you go, okay, that's like you're at 11 sessions or whatever per week. That's a lot. Can you really fit it in? Yeah, no, I can do. And then you see 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line that there's a lot of missed sessions because they were not realistic with their timing. So you really have to say, okay, it's best to probably start conservatively and say, okay, I can do 3 sessions a week. And then if you have time, get that extra little session in, rather than negatively thinking that you've missed session. I think probably mentally,
yes,
you'd think
exactly, yeah,
achieving more.
Yeah,
you think, oh, I can do 1 more session.
Yes.
It's much more positive than being negative. Oh, I've missed another session this week.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're saying, actually, this SMART acronym is very helpful, but it really needs a little bit of a reflection. So it's just not, putting a plan on paper and saying, look, this goal setting is the way to achieve something. because it's when as soon as you get disappointed, then most probably it results in getting demotivated, or even I guess also being injured, for example, because you're overdoing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, that's true. And sometimes it's true that you can be very, I'm not saying that you should do more. If you've already got done, it depends on the athletes. If you only have 2-3 sessions a week and you can get that other one in, that's great, because you don't normally have a lot of time. Adding one session will really help. If you're an athlete which is already doing 10, 12 sessions a week, and you're doing another one, that's probably the one too much, and then you can get injured.
Overdo it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's really the best performance is triggered when it's specific and difficult, so challenging but realistic. What we're saying. And with regards to the realistic part, it has so many phases. So does it fit in my daily program? Does it fit in my work, with my family? Is my body ready for that? So that's why we need a physical coach to coach us. And also you need to be engaged. So you really need to have a goal that is important to you, that has a meaning. So the why, again, is also very important.
Yeah.
Why do I want this? What is exactly that I expect when I get that? So when I go over the finish line, when I dream about that, then what emotion does it trigger in me? Is it really something I want? And am I able, or am I willing to give up something for that?
Absolutely. No, I mean, on the time, the last thing I'd say is which season are you going to race as well? That's another thing, because which time of the year are you going to race? For me, for example, my summer is incredibly busy with the kids camps. There's no point having a race in August because I'm not going to have any training. So I try to put my big race, let's say, in June, and maybe if I want to have another one, I can have another one in September, October. But you have to know which time of the year suits you best. If there's a race in the middle of the Easter holiday and you're always going on holiday with your family, then obviously don't pick that race. It's going to have an impact on the whole family. So really be, smart about what race you want to do, and what time of the year. You just want to set yourself up for success. If you... Let's put the other way around. Imagine you're doing the hardest race in the world at the wrong time of the year with the wrong type of training. If you put it extremely like this, it sounds stupid, but you're obviously going to fail.
Yes.
But if you put all the chances behind you on your side, then you've got a chance of succeeding.
Yes. And with that fixing, because basically you're setting you up for success, you're fixing your objectives, you're doing everything that you need to do to frame that, then we can also sometimes come in a situation where it's just something happens unexpectedly. And then how you deal with that? Sometimes I guess you have your clients who have set up themselves for a big event, but something comes up unexpectedly, an injury, or maybe something, circumstances in the family,
like COVID or something.
COVID.
No, yeah, absolutely. You can. When you plan a season, it doesn't mean it's set in stone. Things will happen. Like you said, you might get a new job, and all of a sudden your time scheduling is all. So that smart thing is always adaptable. I imagine you always have to say, okay, what time this month do I have to train, and the communication you have with your coach really helps, because if I set up a program and all of a sudden that person is traveling for 2 weeks with no access to any, that's something you have to review and change. So the posts are movable in a way, and you have to always train with that goal in mind, but the goal can change based on what you're able to do in your preparation.
Okay. Yes.
And I guess that comes the mental aspect side, where for me, for example, when I know on my week I just see green on Training Peaks, that's the platform I use, it's so much more motivating to know I'm achieving the workouts. And then when you see just red, it's a bit like, oh, you're in a negative spiral and you don't know what to do, and you're afraid to do the next workouts because it's going to be too hard and you've missed a few. But if you just see these green boxes, you think, okay, that's fantastic.
And that's why it's so important to plan realistically, because if then all of a sudden becomes orange and red because you're just not, these circumstances do not allow you to follow the program, then it's extremely frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you go to the race, you have quite often your ambition hasn't changed, and you're even more disappointed when basically that's the reality check is there. You know, you wanted to do sub 3 hour marathon, and you've done 3:05 or 3:10. You're a long way off, and huge disappointment arrives because your goal is still there. But if you said to yourself, okay, I didn't have this time, I changed my goal and that's what I'm going to do, and you achieve it, you've got a different mindset.
Yes. Okay. So, and what about planning your training? So if we look at, so we've talked about planning the season. Is there also a way to make sure you have a successful training in terms of goal setting or planning your training?
Yeah, so something I really like to look at is when you pick a race, so you will do with the assessment phase your SMART sort of approach. You can look at a few different things. I like to look at the general demands of the event, the specific demands of the event, your strengths, and your limiters, your weaknesses. So these are the 4 different things that I like to look at when preparing someone, which will then, like you said, dictate what training sessions and workouts we're gonna do.
Okay.
And so imagine you sign up for a sportive, like a étape du Tour. Okay, the étape is great because it changes every year. It's a different course. Normally it's quite hilly, but there's sometimes it's hillier than others. So for example, the étape du Tour, what are the general demands of the event? Well, you need endurance. You know, you need a strong endurance, because if you're doing 150k on the bike with a lot of elevation, for a lot of people it's going to be, 7-8 hours or 10 hours, whatever, so you need strong endurance. Then what are the specific demands of the event? So then you start looking at, is it going to be very hilly? Is it flat? You look at the profile of the course and everything. And is it if you train for an Ironman, well, you need to be super steady. If you train for an étape, if you're at the pointy end, you want to make sure you stay in a peloton. So you need variability. So these are the specific demands of the events. And through the assessment phase, you can determine what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses or limiters. And if your limiters are limiting you for the specific demands or the general demands of the event, then you've got to really work on that. But if those limiters are not really important for the demands of the event, well, we don't really care.
Right.
Now, if your strengths are fitting the demands of the event, then great. We're going to actually focus really on your strengths as well and train that and keep on focusing on that. Now, if it's the other way around, well, you need to absolutely work on, if for example, if you're doing an Ironman on the bike and you've got very strong, let's say 1 minute power and very weak 1 hour power, well, your 1 minute power for an Ironman is not going to help you much. You need to be good at so you need to bump up more your FTP, so your 1 hour, to really build your endurance rather than just at 1 minute. So I think that this is super important when you want to, first, like we said, you plan your season with the SMART approach, pick your race, that time of the year. And once you've done that, analyze what is the race going to be like and what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses. And based on that, you can train much more specifically.
Yes. And then if we look at the mental side, I would also argue that it is wise to reflect well on, if it turns out that you have to work so hard on your weaknesses, this means you have to step out of your comfort zone all the time. So imagine I'm more a sprint type, but I would love to do an Ironman. But this means I have not only to work very hard on my endurance and especially pacing myself, but also stepping outside of my comfort zone, because I'm so comfortable with speed and pushing myself. Whereas in the Ironman, it's rather trying to keep pace and just to endure it. So it's also mentally you have to reflect, saying, look, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to step out of my comfort zone, to do something which I'm maybe not good at, and maybe be disappointed about that, because it's probably going to be tough. And maybe my body is even not able to do so because I've never tried. So I think there is also this mental side I like your matrix. Basically, it's a matrix looking at
Going quadrant analysis.
Yes, analysis.
Four
yes.
square,
Yes, and it's very nice, because if it turns out that you're actually stepping into something new, that could be super exciting, but it's also risky.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's true, and it's difficult to face those limiters, those weaknesses, and to train on that. And we want to, like we said last time, brush them under the carpet.
Yes.
But actually, you have to really look at, but that's the thing, are those weaknesses, do they actually matter? That's really the question. Maybe they don't, so that's great, but if they do,
yes,
well,
we're often very fixed on our weaknesses, so they do matter psychologically.
But depending on the goal, and maybe that you can also you could do that quadrant analysis as well. You can do an assessment phase, let's say where I am, and then okay, what's the best for me next season. So before signing up to an event, you can always do these assessments on the bike, let's say, or on the run, on the swim, and say, okay, if I want mentally a less, let's say, mentally difficult challenge, but still a big challenge, I can go, okay, what are my strengths today? What are my weaknesses? I'm going to race next season based on my current strengths rather than something. You see, so maybe you could change your goal versus what your current strengths and weaknesses are.
Yes, definitely.
But like you said, it's also nice to step out of your comfort zone and do that. But I'm not saying, it's not like now I'm going to start, I don't know, a extreme swimming event, because swimming is my weakness, for example. But it's true that, for example, if you take, like, let's say my example of swimming, I mean, I've come a long way in swimming, but it's probably a weakness in my triathlon. But if I have to gain 1 minute or 2 minutes in the swim, the amount of time it's going to take me to get that 1 or 2 minutes off, and for an Ironman it's going to last, hopefully, 9.5 hours for me. That's that's just trivial. It's nothing. So I can train a swim as much as I want, but if I can get a good rhythm, let's say I swim now 3-4 times a week. Well, I can't now because it's all closed, but you have to be realistic as well about, is it really a good time spent? I'd rather spend that one extra session on the bike or on a run where I can really make up for some time. So is my swim really a limiter?
Yes.
You see, is it?
So you have to be smart again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
So and we can do that for so many sports, not just endurance sports, but any sports. Maybe your limiter is actually, it doesn't have to be physical as well. That could be the mental side.
Definitely.
Are you strong mentally? Are you weak, entre guillemets, mentally? If you give up or tend to kind of be bored after, well, that's definitely a weakness that you have to train. And maybe from previous racing, you can look at previous races, okay, and analyze. That's what we were doing before, the sort of in the postseason, where you kind of analyze what happened the year before, analyze it, and you're gonna know, what do I need to work on next season.
Yes. And also maybe analyze your training, because sometimes, or quite often, I think the race itself is super exciting. So definitely there are going to be moments where you're bored, but finally you will look back at it, hopefully, in a very joyful way. But then the training, that could be different. There could be days that you're just very bored, or there could be days that your training is super hard and that you're just, well, simply not really enjoying it. So I think also reflecting or thinking or analyzing the way you have experienced the training, but also the way you approach the training. And we're getting back now to the idea of planning. I think it's also wise to spend maybe 1 minute before a training to ask yourself, so what am I going to do? So what is the activity?
It's true. It's good time now to switch and focus now on the, like you said at the beginning, the mental side of planning your training, your session.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's ask yourself, what am I going to do? That's quite obvious because often we have like a program. It's put on paper or in Training Peaks. So look at it. What is it? What am I going to do today? How is it going to look like? What does the training entail exactly? But also why? How does it fit in the big picture? You shouldn't spend too much time on that because often we understand why we're training, but it's still interesting to think how it fits in the complete picture of your training or of your season.
Or your week, for example.
For your weeks,
so
exactly.
I say to I obviously plan the week of training for my athletes. But if one of the athletes say, okay, I don't know what meetings they have or things like that, but I plan to the best of my knowledge. But if someone says, on Thursday I've got a huge day, shift that session, move it.
Exactly.
And so planning, like you said, taking a minute to look at the session, but maybe taking a minute to look at the week or the month, and that is important as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very important to make sure you're spending your energy right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the final thing is also how. So that's really the mental side of planning your training, your sessions. How do I want to show up emotionally and psychologically? So it's how do I want to engage in my training? What is important? And it helps you to specify your attitude, to prime yourself, basically.
Yeah.
And to prime is really to setting your mind up to it. So instead of just being in a rush, because often we have very, very busy lives. So we come home, we know we still have this session to do, we just quickly change and then we jump on the bike or on our home trainer. But just take a few seconds to ask yourself, how do I want to show up? And that is also something you train your mind to prime and to prepare your mind. And this is very useful during the race. So if you do that already in your training phase, then definitely your mind will be much more comfortable with setting itself up when you have your race. So do I want to be confident? Do I want to be have fun? Do I want to push myself? This is also something you need to be prepared for.
What would you say to people who are anxious about tests? So I know, for example, we just talked about the assessment. And obviously the assessment paints the picture of your current fitness. And you might be very happy with the result, or you might not be happy about the result, So, and that when you're anticipating, when you're anxious about what it could be, sometimes I see people who just miss or just don't do it or just really avoid it. It didn't work, or I had this and that, and sorry, I'll do that next week. And it's next week and whatever. So what would you advise people who are anxious about those key, let's say key session, the assessment?
I would say you're trying to avoid something, so you have some expectations. Be honest with yourself, sit down and ask yourself, what do I expect? And how can I prove that? So if I expect to really, really have a shitty test, then why? Why do you think that? Is it because you didn't do anything for months? Or is it not? Is it a realistic thought? Or is it something irrational? So this is something you think about that. And then, either way, even if you are right in your expectation, because probably you will have a shitty result because you have to work. You haven't done anything for months. Just turn it into something positive. So if you expect to be strong because you have been doing quite some sports before, then prime your mind. Just tell yourself to push because you have the room to push yourself. If you think you're not ready, but you have to do it because you want to do it, you ask yourself, do I want to do it or not? Then just try to turn it into something positive. See how far you get, and just look at yourself as having a huge potential. So it's only the start. It can only get better. But it's a choice. If you start avoiding, then ask yourself, why the hell, anyway, am I in this training program? What do I want?
Yeah,
because it's not helpful at all.
For me, the point is you do an assessment, like I said earlier, to determine your correct training zones. And it doesn't matter whether you're 5% lower, 10% lower, or 5% better. It's, it's the moment now that you are in now that's important. That's your current picture. Versus a PB versus a year ago or 2 years ago, who cares? Because a year ago is a different situation. You might have had a different family situation or work situation, etc. But to really progress correctly, you need to test. So it's difficult to approach these sessions, and I know they are really tough, because you give it your best. But to be, you kind of have to accept that sometimes you're not always going to do better.
Yeah, but apparently people do care about this gap they expect. So it's what is in this expectation? What is in this anxiety? Is it because you are being confronted with your current situation? And what is it exactly that you're anxious about? It makes sense to explore that a little bit and to look at that, especially, is it rational or not? I would say most of what we think is irrational. So, and it's also because we don't dare to speak it out loudly. And if people don't dare to discuss it with you, then they can also maybe write it down or just reflect a little bit. But in the end, it's not helpful. You're hiring a trainer, a coach, to get better. So if you just, are going to work against that, it's not going to make you better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that goes back to the measurable...
it's self-sabotage.
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's very common.
So I've tried, we've talked a little bit about, for example, meditation or mindfulness. And I've tried a few times, and I'm trying to do it often, that just to take, even if it's just 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes before a very hard session, to just basically sit down on the chair, close my eyes, and just nothing for 2-3 minutes. And that's something that's really helped me.
Yeah.
Because you are really not focused on anything else. There's no phone, there's nothing. You're really, like you said, getting ready for that session.
Yes.
Clearing your mind.
Yes. Well, it's very good that you're doing that, and it's definitely something which I would recommend everybody.
You did recommend it to me, so
I know. I would definitely recommend everybody to do that. And there is also, besides meditation, there we call it self-compassion. So, and it's being kind to oneself. And there's a lot of misunderstanding because if you would, self-compassion doesn't mean to give up. And especially in the context of sports, you would rather use it by, okay, if you are in a squeeze, so suppose I'm super anxious about my test. And I recognize that because sometimes you have to do a test and it's just like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm better. I didn't sleep well, and all kinds of excuses not to turn up. And it's and then self-compassion is super important. It's not about saying, no, it's fine, you didn't sleep well, so you can do it tomorrow. No, it's sitting down and telling and asking yourself, what do I need now to make it happen?
Yeah.
So and that's a complete different perspective. So you're going to do it today, whatever happens. But what do you need? And then I could tell myself, well, actually, what I need is just to have to speak to myself and just to cheer myself up. And I need a friend actually who tells me that I'm great. So I'm going to call a friend. I'm just going to ask him to cheer me up, and that was enough. And I'm not going to sit on the bike and doing that bloody test. So it's really something you can do if you are in a squeeze. Ask yourself, what do I need? What does my mind need? Because often it's your mind, it's your mental side that is resisting. What do I need now? I want my coach to cheer me up, to give me confidence.
Hmm.
So I'm going to call Thierry, and he's going to say, you can do this. You have this. Go for it. Okay, you hang up, and you just go and sit down and start your training. If you're doing a bike training.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But then what if, so I quite often tell people on a race, for example, it's very unlikely that I will be there with them, you know. So that's something that in the end, when you are doing an Ironman or a race or whatever it is, you're not going to have your family, your coach or whatever right next to you cheering you all the whole time. So you need to somehow be able to do this on your own.
That's actually it's great what you're saying, because of course sometimes, for example, a coach, I have clients who are in that same situation and they cannot have their coach with them during a tournament because the coach is too busy with other clients or with other athletes.
Yeah.
So, but the question you could ask yourself, what would I like my coach to tell me at that moment where I have a really hard time? And then it can be anything. Then someone could say, I just want him to tell me or to scream at me that I can do it, because that he would normally also do when he's with me. So, and then how would that sound in your mind? So, and then how you can explore together how that would look like without him being there.
So you kind of ask the question and you imagine him replying to you.
Yes. What is the sound? What is the, how would that look like? And how could you, for example, create a mantra that sounds similar to him being next to you and screaming in your ear?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So there are ways to somehow prime or prepare yourself for having your coach with you without having him there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something else I do, maybe it's a bit stupid, but I like to do it when I have, you guys all know by now that I'm addicted to Zwift, and I do a lot of cycling or racing on Zwift, or even if it's just a test on Zwift, a ramp test or FTP test, I like to basically put the best gear that I have. So I will put my best bib short, my best shirt, my favorite socks, everything. It's a race. So I put my most, not comfortable, but my favorite clothes. So I just put myself into this race mode.
Zone, yes.
Yeah, to just, even the way I look, will impact. So we all dress super nicely when we, you go to a cycling race, everybody's put on their favorite gear, their favorite stuff. So if you have to test something, I would say is just to do the same thing.
Exactly. Well, that's a very good remark. Absolutely. I would say keep your routine. Prepare yourself as being a real race. So I like it. I like it very much. Yeah.
And also on the nutrition side, this is something a lot of people really don't pay enough attention to nutrition. And nutrition is before, it's during, and it's after. And that's also part of the whole planning of your session. If you have a very hard session to do, well, for example, I like to have a glass of beetroot juice, like half an hour before. You can have a whole energy drink, but I take a beetroot juice to not always take the energy drink companies, whatever. And during the hard workout, I will have basically the same thing that I would have in a race. So I take it as a race. I'm going to have the same quantity, the same thing. The goal is to perform. So I want to be energized during my workout, hit those numbers, and that energy drink will for sure make me feel better and achieve those than if I just had water or nothing, even worse. And then post-ride, have a recovery drink to prepare myself for the next one, so to feel better the next day, so I can get back onto training as soon as possible. And that's really I see a lot of people make that mistake of having nothing before, just water, and just leaving the bike and doing nothing. That's it.
Yeah.
And then they're tired the next day. Well, you've created such a deficit in your nutrition that of course you're going to feel tired. And then people say, okay, well, I didn't have the energy, or I feel tired. It's like, well, okay, get on top of that sports nutrition. And that's really part of your planning your session to have a successful, week or successful month. But also, the more you practice your nutrition, the better you'll be on race day.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So it's a very good remark. So you have to set yourself up for success, not only for the race, not only for the season, but also for all the separate sessions you are in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a whole thing, I guess.
Yeah.
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 But also, I guess mentally, it's much more difficult when you have a session, hard session to do, and you don't have your energy drink. I mean, mentally, of course, when you're, not full of sugar, but when you have sugar hitting your brain, I mean, it's like, it's like you're gonna do much better.
Yeah. Yes.
You're fueling your body, and mentally, you feel much more energized. Have a coffee, caffeine can help
Boost.
as well. Boost.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. So there's a lot to say about planning your training.
Yeah.
And also planning a test.
Absolutely. But then again, for example, like we said, what is the objective of the training?
Yeah.
So if the objective, for example, is to have fun, don't stress yourself with the best clothes, the best nutrition. Just go in there and have fun. Enjoy. But if the goal is to perform, then for sure you want to plan a little bit more.
Yes.
So I guess the level of planning is depending on the level of importance of the workout.
Exactly. And how do I want to turn up?
Yeah.
That's the question you have to ask yourself. In what psychological state or what mental state do I want to turn up? And then you can, dress yourself up for it.
Yeah.
Like you're going to a party. Yeah. Okay.
So that's cool. That's planning the training. Now, if we look at the planning for the specific event, we touched a little bit on that before, but the mental side of planning your specific event. So tell us a bit more. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, so you have this race in a few weeks. What do? Do you just continue training? Of course, I mean, you have your training program, so you have to follow that. But I would say that, especially as a mental coach, I would say rather spend time on the mental preparation than on the physical training. So probably, unless you're a professional athlete, but you're not going to make the difference to wear yourself out in the last week before the race. It's really try to take time to relax, to prepare, to study briefing, to use Google Maps, Strava, talk to people who have also done the race. There are many, many things. You can break the race up. You can look at different stages. And also ask yourself, what do I look forward to? So why am I going to do this race? Because this is my dream since a year. I mean, this is what I've worked for. And what am I going to look forward to during that day? Because probably it's somewhere in nature or maybe if you do a marathon in a specific city where you have maybe not been yet. So there's really something to look forward to. So you look at your race in a different way. It's rather than a physical activity. It's also something you're going to enjoy. So it's really...
Yeah, for me, for example, when I did my bike race, the Such race, the Ultra Challenge, I was really looking forward to the mountains.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was those views, the mountains going through these passes that are just epic. That was really what the whole experience was for me to go around there and just enjoy it. And it's true, it made the first couple of days much easier in a way, because I had this goal of getting there, and so it's true. I was really looking forward to that.
Yeah. So it will definitely change your mindset if you think in terms of, I'm so excited. I'm going to, I'm going through all these passes and I've never been there. What would be behind those mountains? Instead of creating some anxiety around the suffering you're going to experience. Yeah. Of course, there is suffering, but I mean, it really changes. And the other thing is also ask yourself, what do I believe about this race? It's fantastic to talk with a lot of people to understand their experience. And this is also definitely something I would recommend to do to make sure you're well prepared. But be very careful about what you start to believe about races. Some people would probably tell you that it's super hot, that there is so much wind, that So and if you don't, if you start to really believe that, and probably it's also for a fact.
Yeah.
But if this starts to grow, then it can also trigger a lot of anxiety. For example, the wall in marathons. Everybody talks about a wall.
Yeah.
Hitting the wall.
Yeah.
But if you've never done a marathon, maybe there's no wall for you. You don't know.
Yeah. So if you always talk about the wall and think about the wall, well,
will probably be there.
Will be a wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are very smart and very normal, or I would say very simple ways to more or less avoid that if there are. So make sure you do everything to avoid the wall. But then don't make it too big, because most probably you're not going to hit a wall. I mean, there is something else you will discover, which you don't know yet.
But I really like what you said before about checking Strava, for example, because that's something I do sometimes, where if I haven't been to a place and I just look on Strava, is there a segment? So let's say that mountain, that pass I'm going to go through. So let's have a quick look at Strava, and you will see who of course he has the KOM, who's the best, but you can also click on see the people you're following, your friends or whatever, and then you can see, okay, this guy, he's done it in that time and he's done it in this time, and that gives you a gauge. You can gauge the difficulty of the climb that you're going to have to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can expect myself to go about an hour for this one. And that really helps, because otherwise, if you're in the middle of the climb and you have no clue how long it's going to take and you're already tired, you might be after 45 minutes, you think, when is this ending? But you have no idea. It could be ending in a 45 minutes, 2 hours, Then mentally it's much more difficult, the unknown.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So it's good to cut or break it up in stages.
As well, yeah, that's true.
So really break it up in stages, depending on the race. I mean, that can be, a half marathon. I think you don't need to break it up in like 20 pieces. But
no,
but your race or your such challenge, I would say. That's typically something you would break it up.
Yeah, exactly. But if you look at a marathon or an Ironman event, you do break it up in many segments, because otherwise you can't think of the whole thing. Even a marathon, I'm 3 hours or 3.5 hours or 4 hours. That's a long way. Think of a 5K, a 10K, and break it up at a time. That's why I personally really like courses where you do many loops, because you can break it. You have to break it down. Your first 10K, second 10K, third and fourth, and that's your marathon.
Yes.
Whereas if it's just a one loop, it's mentally much more difficult, I find, because the end is just that long stretch rather than many loops. So I don't know. Some people don't really like it because maybe it's a bit boring because you see the same thing again and again. I actually find that a motivation, because you can say, okay, I've done the first lap, I've done the second lap and third lap, and only one lap to go. And that's for example, when I did the Everest last year, if I think of doing 240 kilometers and 8,848 meters, well, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah. We're talking about the Strava Everest challenge.
Yeah. So the Everest I did this year in June.
Yeah.
But if you break it up in one climb at a time, so my strategy was just basically do the first 3 on the Barriette, and then another 3, and then you break it down. I think 3, 2, 2, and then 1, and you break it down in multiple times, but not the whole 9.5 climbs, because otherwise you get lost.
Yes.
And that's not motivating anymore.
Compartmenting the effort.
But so places like Strava, I think, really help. Breaking down, like you say. And good point about Google Maps, or to look at how is going to be the terrain that you're going to train on. When you go a trail run, or is it going to be very rocky? Or just even doing some recce's. So if you can, quite often you travel to a place, so you might not know the course. But if you are doing a local race, go and do multiple segments of that race if you can. So, for example, we have the marathon in Geneva. I think it would be, if you haven't done it before, you'd be surprised, actually. It's quite hilly at the beginning, and then it goes a bit downhill. There's not always pavement, so on the tarmac. So it's doing, maybe go there and do 4 times 10K and do all the segments, then it won't be a surprise anymore.
Yeah. Well,
so that's and if you have to travel, maybe go with the car, do the whole route if you can with the car.
Yes.
So you visualize it yourself
Yes.
the day before, and you go, okay, this is the climb that's going to be.
Yeah, and with the visualization, you can go very far. So you can visualize several things. You can visualize the finish to start with. So how does it look like? How do you want to feel? I mean, probably you're super excited, super happy. Who is going to be there? That kind of visualization will definitely boost you before the event, but also during. It's very helpful to have that ready, that kind of visualization or that kind of mental image when you're having a hard time. You can visualize difficult moments. So what am I going to do? Maybe you have a picture of someone you want to bring with you, or some mantras. So what would normally my coach tell me, or my husband, or my wife, or my child, or she's going to be super proud of me. But you can also visualize the complete course. I've once seen an ultra trail runner with his eyes closed, and he was actually during really like 10 minutes non-stop visualizing the course, moving his whole upper body, his hands, and it was fantastic picture to see, because I really saw him going through the whole parcours.
Yeah. But this is what the skiers, for example, are doing.
Also, yes.
Just before a race, you see them before the start line,
definitely,
and they're like moving their upper body, and then or the bobsleigh guys, and because you need to know the course.
Yes.
This is the extreme, obviously, because we're talking 1 minute or 2 minute races. So if they don't know the course by heart, they cannot perform.
No.
Simple as that. They're not going to win.
Yeah.
So we're not obviously talking that extreme, but sure, knowing the course and knowing which moment I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, that is so helpful.
Yes. Yeah, and even if it's like a multi-hour event, it will help to anticipate. So your brain is going, it's like your brain is ready for what's next. And it will help you not to doubt or to start, wondering how much still, because there's this hill, there is this steep hill, then you have a long downhill, then have a small hill, and so forth. So it's really like, hey, you're planning actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the planning, you're looking at the course is something that is super important, and that's where we go back to what I said before, is the specific demands of the event. If you have a hilly course, well, you got to train some hills, trying to find a way to train some hills. If you know you're going to get a lot of wind, well, if it's a windy day, go and train in the wind, because you have to know that. So like, you have to train physically, but like you said, train it mentally to know what's coming next.
Yes. Yeah. And also to learn to deal with the unknown, which is also very important.
What if, this happens or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can plan all the things to perfection, and then you blow up a tire and bam, that wasn't part of the plan.
No.
Then you have to, okay, what's now? You know, how to deal with the sudden... but that's okay. That's another thing. But yeah, I think it's... For me, planning, if you plan well, your season, your time, like we said, you go through the smart process of planning your season, you set yourself up for success.
Exactly. Yeah.
You want to... For me, my key takeaway, let's say, on this would be, pick a race or two that you really want to do well. Don't pick 10 races, like we said. No, just pick one race, 2 races. The other ones, they'll be supporting those races. We're going to train for your main event. So, for example, if your goal is an Ironman, then pick a half Ironman. That's going to be your B race. If you don't have a PB on the B race, it doesn't matter. What's the focus is the A race. So have a detailed plan of what you want to do, an achievable plan, like we said. Your A race, your B race, your C races. And by doing that, you're really setting yourself up for success. And it's clear what you're going to do.
Okay, yeah. And my key takeaway is that if we plan properly, we make room for other things.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of serenity we get by planning. Committing to something creates room for other things. If we do not commit, we start to float. And when floating, it's just, you don't know why you're doing it. You don't know what you have to do, how you have to do it, when you have to do it.
You lose time.
You lose time.
Yeah.
And it's very subtle. But we're floating a lot with many things in our lives because we forget, I'm not saying we're not committed, but we forget to consciously commit to something. To stand still for a few minutes saying, what do I want? Why do I want it? How am I going to do it? And and it's a process, so you can change. It's not that you cannot change, but standing still and reflecting on that creates room for other things, for the activity itself, for the process itself.
Yeah, you kind of as well remove all that doubt, so it's great. I mean, planning is just, it's preparation. That's another word.
Yeah.
How to prepare, preparation, again and again and again. And if you plan successfully, you can have a successful race or season or reach your goals. If you don't plan anything, you might, but you're leaving it to chance and you might have a disaster.
Yes.
So it's all about setting yourself up for success.
Yes.
Maayke, any other business? What are you up to?
Yeah, well, actually, I had a good week. Tuesday I had a day off, and I'm currently trying to train a little bit my dealing with the unknown. So sometimes I just try to go for on a trail run, for example, for 10K, without any plans, without any routes, and I really deliberately try to get lost and try to have my, to understand really where am I, where did I come from, to deal with the unknown. And I really enjoy that, actually. Yeah.
So you basically, everything we talked about before, you're just putting in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No plans. No, I just look on Strava.
Like, it's plan, unplan, kind of planning to be unplanned.
Unplanned.
Oh,
Yes, exactly. And and really try to get lost between brackets to see how I deal with that, but within a framework. So saying I want to do 10K with 300 or 400 meters of height difference, and I try to really get that.
It's interesting because it can happen on a trail run, on a race.
Yeah.
That you get lost. You don't see one of the pointers, and you just take a wrong turn. And on site, I've so many times I've seen it. And how do you react?
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and even if the track is very clear, there will be unknown.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you're gonna make it. That's the unknown. So the doubt. It's doubt. Am I going to finish this? That's the same kind of doubt. Whereas telling yourself, I have no clue where I am at this moment.
And where did you run?
Oh, in the Jura. And Tuesday I went to Champéry. There I know a little bit more.
Yes.
So that was...
I saw that you were above the clouds.
I cheated.
It was a nice... when we were all in the fog in Geneva, you were nice in the sun. And so I've been doing... what have I been doing? A lot of Zwift racing, or, I've been really enjoying... So we've got a team going on. It's called the Zwift Racing League. And every week, every Tuesday night, there's either a team time trial or a scratch race. And the level is just incredibly high. So we've got no chance on a scratch race to be any of us to be in the top 30. Because you only get 1 point if you get 30th.
Oh,
so it's like, it's too tough. So you'd have to absolutely kill yourself to be 30th, and there's no guarantees. Huh? So we decided on Tuesday that we'd practice the team time trial, and there's 6 of us, and you basically draft all each other, and there's one at the front who does the pull, and then you take turns, and it's so much fun because we're on Discord at the same time. And you hear everybody, and I go, okay, you go 2 minutes, you go at the front, yeah, that wattage, perfect. And and it's so much fun. And for about an hour, we're just communicating on Discord and Zwifting. I think the guys really, really enjoy it.
Cool.
Have you ever tried some of that?
No.
It's a shame they haven't done there is a women's league, and hopefully hopefully we'll have enough women who want to participate in that. But it's incredibly fun. So I really like it.
I fancy doing that.
Yeah.
Maybe we can.
Well, I need to get. We need to get a little team together.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they don't have the mixed team. But anyway, and yeah. So next week on Tuesday, that's the team time trial on the London course. So that's going to be a really, really fun event. So really looking forward to that. And and now I'm going to do some acupuncture.
Wow, I love that.
I'm a big fan.
Actually, yeah,
big fan of acupuncture. Yeah. Chinese medicine, I love it. Yes. So it's a little bit, but get a lot out of it. Cupping, have you tried that as well?
No, not yet.
Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really, so you look a bit strange, especially if you go to the pool. Like, well, pools are closed, but because you get these like red or
purple.
Even black purple marks, you know, and you look like some sort of you look like you have some sort
alien.
of disease or an alien, exactly. But I love it. I really enjoy it. So I go to see someone in Gland, Jennifer. She's really good, and this is my sort of relaxing end of the week type of session.
Well, have fun. Enjoy
definitely.
that.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.